The Walking Dead turned zombie survival into a cultural phenomenon, but real combat veterans and survival experts say Rick Grimes would be dead in weeks. Every tactical decision, every fortification failure, every magical bullet contradicts basic military doctrine and real-world science. That's why today, I'm breaking down the 12 biggest things The Walking Dead gets completely wrong about apocalypse survival, starting with the most inexcusable mistake that appears in literally every single episode: bite-proof armor. Nobody wears bite-proof armor despite a single scratch being fatal. Before you say this is nitpicking, hear me out. The show establishes in Season 1 that one bite kills you, one scratch kills you. Getting Walker blood in an open wound can kill you. The entire universe runs on the rule that any contact with Walker teeth or fluids is a death sentence. So why does Rick Grimes charge into melee combat wearing a t-shirt and jeans for 11 seasons? Here's the thing. Glenn briefly wore prison riot gear in Season 3, but ditched it because of heat. The Kingdom had medieval-style armor. Commonwealth troops eventually wore white stormtrooper suits in Season 11, but Rick's core group spent a decade fighting the undead with exposed arms, necks, and legs like they were gonna brunch, not battling an extinction-level threat. The Zombie Research Society demonstrated that a hooded sweatshirt wrapped in strips of industrial duct tape provides near-complete bite protection. Add leather gloves and goggles and you're virtually bite and splatter proof. Motorcycle gear exists in every town. Sports shin guards are in every sporting goods store. Thick leather jackets are hanging in every closet. Magazines duct taped to forearms would stop bites cold. All of this is readily scavengeable. All of it is ignored, and the heat excuse makes no sense. Medieval warriors had to worry about heat stroke too, but when life or death combat was coming, the armor went on. The show is set partly in Virginia, where seasons change. Characters could wear protection during runs and take it off at base. They could wear lighter gear in summer and heavier gear in winter, but they never do. This is arguably the show's most inexplicable failure. Every close quarters Walker encounter is one accidental brush of teeth away from death. A leather jacket and work gloves would transform survival odds overnight. The show ignores this because showing characters in full gear would reduce dramatic tension, but it's the single easiest survival upgrade available in the entire apocalypse. At least characters not wearing armor only gets themselves killed, unlike the next mistake that dooms entire communities. Gasoline forever. Gasoline magically works years into the apocalypse. For roughly the first 8 seasons of The Walking Dead, spanning about 2 years of in-universe time, characters freely drive cars, trucks, RVs, and Daryl's motorcycle with zero mention of fuel degradation. Negan's saviors maintain an entire fleet of operational vehicles. They drive to Alexandria. They drive to Hilltop. They drive everywhere like it's a normal Tuesday in 2010. The show finally acknowledged this plot hole in the Season 9 premiere, showing communities transitioning to horses and the sanctuary growing corn for ethanol. But that's 8 seasons too late. Here's where it gets weird. Gasoline degrades in 3 to 6 months without stabilizers, and 12 months maximum with fuel additives like STA Bill. James Spite, author of the Handbook of Petroleum Refining, confirmed that Georgia and Virginia's humid heat would accelerate degradation even faster. The fuel oxidizes, lighter hydrocarbons evaporate, and modern ethanol-blended gas attracts moisture that corrodes rubber seals. John Ramey, founder of The Prepared and advisor to the U.S. Department of Defense, put it bluntly. The idea that after 6 to 12 months of society falling that you're going to find usable gasoline is laughable. Degraded gas turns gummy, clogging fuel systems and destroying engines. You can't just pour it in and drive off into the sunset. But wait, beyond fuel, car batteries die in 2 to 4 months without charging. Rubber hoses crack, tires dry rot, brake lines corrode. Every vehicle the group finds should be a lawn ornament, not a functioning escape vehicle. Transportation range directly determines supply run capability, evacuation speed, and inter-community trade. The realistic survival strategy is what Ramey recommends. Bicycles, the most efficient human machine ever created. Quiet, no fuel, minimal maintenance. Scavenge thousands of them from every suburb in America. The show got 8 seasons of free driving out of a physical impossibility. They drove past the problem because showing Rick pedaling a Schwinn to save Judith doesn't have the same dramatic weight. But that physical impossibility would collapse every long-range mission they ever attempted. If you think magical gasoline is bad, wait until you hear about the next biological impossibility that breaks the entire franchise. Gut camouflage. Characters bathe in zombie guts, but only bites kill. Beginning in the Season 1 episode, Guts, characters smear decomposing Walker entrails on themselves as camouflage. Glenn covers himself head to toe in liquefied organs to walk through downtown Atlanta. Rick does it. Gabriel does it. It becomes a signature survival tactic repeated across the entire franchise. Characters also get drenched in zombie blood during close quarters combat in nearly every episode. Faces covered, mouths open, eyes exposed, and they're fine. In Season 6, Rick sliced his hand open on a machete that was embedded inside a walker. Infected blood went directly directly into an open wound. He wiped it off and kept fighting. Never got sick, never showed symptoms. Nothing. But here's where it gets complicated. Negan's saviors successfully weaponized walker blood in Season 8 by dipping arrows in weapons and entrails. They shot people. Those people died from infection. Tobin died this way. Multiple Alexandrians died this way. The show confirms that walker blood on an open wound is lethal. So explain to me how Rick survives a direct blood-to-wound exposure, but Tobin dies from the exact same thing. Kyle Hill, writing for Scientific American, drew a detailed comparison to Komodo dragon bites. Decomposing flesh harbors gastrointestinal pathogens, tuberculosis, and hepatitis. The WHO has strict protocols for handling corpses specifically because of infection risk. Smearing rotting intestines on exposed skin should hospitalize you, not camouflage you. And here's the kicker. Robert Kirkman himself stated that a zombie bite kills you because of infection or blood loss, not because of the zombie virus, which creates a massive logical contradiction. If bites kill through bacterial infection from decomposing mouths, then smearing decomposing entrails on open skin should be equally lethal. Father Gabriel did get severely ill from gut camouflage in Season 8, requiring antibiotics. The show finally acknowledged the danger, but dozens of other characters survive identical exposure without consequence. Glenn walks through a herd in Season 1 covered in guts. Rick and Michonne do it in Season 6. Aaron and Daryl do it. Everyone's fine. Any bloodborne pathogen expert would classify open wound contact with decomposing tissue as an extreme infection risk requiring immediate decontamination and antibiotics. The gut camouflage tactic, while clever in fiction, would be extraordinarily dangerous in practice. The show's inconsistency is the problem, sometimes lethal, usually harmless. It undermines its own survival logic depending on what the plot needs that week. At least inconsistent infection rules only create confusion, unlike the next mistake that violates basic firearm physics: infinite ammunition. Infinite ammunition and firearms that never jam. Season 8 is the worst offender in the entire franchise. TV Guide described it as characters activating an unlimited ammo cheat code in Call of Duty. People just firing guns willy-nilly, holding assault rifles over their heads and firing blindly with no recoil. A Browning M250 caliber machine gun blows baseball-sized holes in people at 100 yards in one scene, but can't dent a Jeep's grill at 10 yards in another. Herschel fires his 7-round Remington 870 shotgun far more times than physically possible without reloading in the Season 2 finale. Cool. But then there's reality. USMC Sergeant Major Mike Burke, a 25-year Marine infantry veteran, delivered the definitive takedown. Everyone seems to be running around the apocalypse without any spare magazine. I can't ever recall seeing a single magazine change in the whole show, and that's not hyperbole. A US infantryman carries only 210 rounds total. A 30-round magazine on full auto empties in approximately 2.5 seconds. That's it. That's your spray and pray budget. Red dot sight batteries die within months. Firearms require regular cleaning, where they jam, corrode, and fail. The show depicts this exactly once. Shane cleans his shotgun in Season 2, Episode 1. That's it across 11 seasons. Characters also fire 357 magnums inside enclosed spaces like tanks with 0 hearing damage, despite unsuppressed gunfire reaching 140 to 160 decibels, well above the threshold for permanent hearing loss. Here's the thing. Ammunition would be one of the most precious commodities in any collapse scenario. The US has roughly 10 billion rounds in civilian hands. Sounds like a lot. Divide that by 330 million people and you get about 30 rounds per person. Except most people don't own guns, so realistically, you're looking at maybe 100 to 200 rounds per gun owner. Then factor in that most ammunition is concentrated in the hands of collectors and preppers, not randomly distributed. Wasting rounds on missed shots or suppressive fire against walkers who don't take cover is suicidal resource management. Burke's assessment is brutal. If there are more walkers than bullets, there is no fighting to be done, just running and shooting things in your way. But the show depicts characters dumping full magazines into individual walkers from 50 feet away like ammunition grows on trees. Nobody scrounges for ammo. Nobody reloads their own cartridges. Nobody transitions to bows, crossbows, or suppressed .22 rifles, despite those being the actual apocalypse meta. The show ignores this because showing characters carefully rationing their last 12 bullets doesn't create the action sequences AMC needs for ratings. If you think infinite bullets are unrealistic, wait until you hear about the next acoustic impossibility that should get everyone killed: sound discipline. Sound discipline is non-existent despite noise being the primary threat. The show establishes in its first episode that walkers are attracted to sound. Rick fires a gun inside a tank and immediately attracts a herd. The survivors learn that noise equals death. Then the show ignores this rule for 11 seasons. Characters routinely fire unsuppressed weapons in open areas. Massive firefights break out with 0 walker herds attracted. Characters hold full-volume conversations while hiding feet from the undead. Suppressors appear starting in Season 3 but are depicted as making firearms nearly silent. Matt Mock, founder of the Zombie Research Society, told GQ that the last thing you want to do is start making noise. You might as well get on your roof with a dinner bell and say, "Hey, come eat me." Real suppressors reduce sound by approximately 30 decibels, from roughly 160 decibels to 130 decibels. That's still jackhammer loud and capable of causing hearing damage. But the show treats suppressors like magic silence wands. The firearms community has repeatedly asked why characters don't prioritize suppressed .22 rifles, virtually silent with subsonic ammunition. Billions of rounds available, more than sufficient for Walker headshots at close range. Instead, characters favor hand cannons and assault rifles that function as Walker dinner bells. The show selectively enforces its own rules, depending on dramatic needs. Sometimes a gunshot brings hundreds of walkers. Sometimes characters empty magazines and nothing happens. The rule exists. The characters know it. They violate it constantly without consequence. Walker decomposition. Walker decomposition should solve the entire problem within a year. Walkers remain mobile and dangerous for 6+ years after the initial outbreak. By later seasons, they're visually more decayed, but still functional. Walking, biting, gripping, and even climbing. Melissa Unfred, a Texas mortician interviewed by Live Science, explained decomposition science. Bacteria begin digesting internal tissues after death, releasing gases that cause bloating. Walkers inexplicably skip this stage entirely. More importantly, decomposing bodies lose the tendons holding bones together. Maybe that's why zombies jolt around awkwardly, Unfred said. Otherwise, their legs would fly off. In hot, humid Georgia conditions, active decay reduces a body to bones and dried skin within weeks to months, not years, weeks. Dr. John Neary of McMaster University added that the brain requires constant blood flow containing glucose and oxygen to function. Without circulation, zombie brains simply cannot work. Kyle Hill calculated that in Atlanta's climate, most zombies would be harmless within 3 to 6 months. The heat would accelerate bacterial breakdown. Insects would consume soft tissue. Robert Kirkman acknowledged this in the comics, stating that whatever mysterious element is making them walk is also slowing their decay, essentially hand-waving the show's central scientific impossibility. The realistic survival strategy would be fortify, wait 6 months, and walk out into an empty world. Hunker down through one Georgia summer and the problem solves itself. But the show needs functional zombies for drama, so decay operates on TV logic instead of thermodynamics. Vegetable gardens. Small vegetable gardens somehow feed entire communities. Rick grows cucumbers and tomatoes at the prison, presented as a therapeutic hobby. Alexandria sustains 50 to 60 people with modest gardens. Hilltop farms with raised beds and chickens. Characters appear well-nourished despite minimal visible food production. Dan Kemper, organic farmer at the Rodale Institute, told Live Science that about 3 or 4 acres of crops would be needed to keep a dozen people fed for a year. Alexandria's 50 residents would need 12 to 20 acres of productive cropland. A 2,500 square foot garden growing potatoes could feed only 1 to 2 people annually. Survival analysts calculated that Rick's cucumber garden was essentially useless calorically. 1 cucumber is 50 calories. Why not grow potatoes? You need calorie-dense staples. Potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, beans. Not tomatoes and cucumbers for apocalypse salad. Scott Hunt of Practical Preppers called food scarcity one of the least realistic things in the show. Grocery stores carry 3 days' worth of food at normal consumption. They'd be stripped bare within 1 to 2 weeks of collapse. Active adults doing physical labor need 2,500 to 3,500 plus calories per day, not the occasional can of beans. These characters are fighting walkers, building walls, hauling supplies. That burns energy. Where are those calories coming from? Food procurement would dominate daily life. Every waking hour would be spent farming, hunting, foraging, and protecting food stores. The show skips this because watching characters hoe fields doesn't make compelling television. Hunt's brutal observation: we don't totally blame the cannibals at Terminus. Fortification failures. Fortification strategy would embarrass a medieval peasant. Every community builds single-layer defenses with no redundancy. Alexandria uses corrugated metal walls. The prison relies on chain-link fencing. None feature moats, kill zones, or multiple defensive lines. When a watchtower collapses in Season 6, a massive herd pours through with nothing to stop them. Military veterans have criticized the absence of fortification principles humans mastered thousands of years ago. A simple ditch around Alexandria would prevent walker pileups against walls. Walkers can't climb. They can't jump. A 6-foot trench stops them completely. Canadian Prepper marveled at the absence of basic tripwire alarms. Do you realize you can just get string and tin cans? Nobody sets them up anywhere. Sergeant Major Burke reserved special contempt for Alexandria's weapons policy. These clowns keep weapons in an armory instead of issuing firearms to every household. household. In a world where walls can fail at any moment, every adult should be armed. No firing positions were built into walls. Medieval castles had crenellation. Alexandria just has a flat wall with no way to shoot from cover. No fallback positions existed. No evacuation plans were rehearsed. Moats and ditches, the most basic fortification in history, never dug. Sharpened stake trenches, zero material cost, never used. Multiple defensive lines, so if the first wall fails, you have somewhere to retreat, never built. Opaque fence coverings to block walkers' line of sight, never installed. The show's communities build defenses that a Roman legionary would laugh at. Against an enemy that can't use tool, can't climb, and can't think, basic earthworks would make any settlement nearly impregnable. Radio silence. Nobody uses radios despite communication solving half their problems. Radios appear sporadically. Rick gives Morgan a walkie-talkie in season 1. Then the group goes multiple seasons with virtually no distance communication. Walkie-talkies appear in some situations but are never standard equipment. Think about how many problems would have been mitigated if survivors could communicate over distance, inside those dark prison corridors, while attacking Woodbury, while on scavenging parties. Amazing Stories identified communication failure as arguably the show's most consequential tactical mistake. Police stations are overflowing with radio equipment. Fire departments have communication systems. Military vehicles have tactical radios. Electronics stores have CB and ham equipment. Ham radios can reach hundreds of miles. CB radios require zero infrastructure. The show's signature dramatic device is the group splitting up and losing contact. Glenn goes on a supply run. Nobody hears from him for hours. Everyone assumes he's dead. Radios solve this instantly. The survival mom emphasized that reliable information is going to be one of the first casualties in a crisis, and radios provide both tactical coordination and psychological comfort. You're not alone. You can call for backup. You can warn people. You can coordinate movements. Cameron Carlson, a U.S. Navy officer, also noted the absence of dogs as early warning systems. They would be a good warning device. Watch the dogs. If they act strange, something is wrong. The group has a radio expert in Eugene. He could have established a communication network across Virginia. Instead, communities operate in information blackouts, making decisions based on days-old intelligence or rumors. Reconnaissance. Optional. Reconnaissance is apparently optional before attacking armed compounds. The most egregious example happens in season 6. Rick agrees to attack Negan's saviors based on intelligence from Hilltop with zero independent verification. He has no idea how many outposts Negan controls, no idea how large his forces are, no idea what weaponry they possess. The group walks in and starts killing people in their sleep. Sergeant Major Burke delivered his harshest assessment. Rick, quite possibly the dumbest of the dumbasses, agreed to take on Negan with little to no intelligence. His group waltzed into Negan territory, murdering people without taking any time to observe them or come up with a long-term plan. As far as I'm concerned, the Grimes gang deserved the ass whooping they got, directly leading to Glenn and Abraham's deaths. Military operations require intelligence gathering before offensive action. Observe the target, estimate enemy strength, identify escape routes, plan contingencies. Rick's raid was the equivalent of a SWAT team breaching a building without knowing how many rooms it has. The failure to conduct reconnaissance is a consistent pattern. The Season 1 camp had no perimeter awareness and was overrun. Dale was on Overwatch and somehow missed hundreds of zombies. Nobody posted lookouts. Nobody established early warning systems. Before you attack anyone, you watch them for days. You count their people. You observe their routines. You identify defenses. You look for weaknesses. You plan multiple assault and escape routes. This isn't advanced military theory. This is basic tactical planning. Burke's summary: how about 360 degrees of security? Jackasses? Perimeter security means someone is always watching in every direction. The show skips reconnaissance because watching characters observe a compound doesn't make exciting television. Medical miracles. Medical miracles happen with dirty tools and zero training. Rick hacks off Herschel's bitten leg with an axe in Season 3. An axe just used to kill walkers. Without sterilizing it, Herschel survives and walks on crutches weeks later. A veterinarian, Herschel, performs abdominal surgery to remove 6 bullet fragments from Carl in Season 2 without imaging equipment or proper anesthesia. He's a vet. He treats cows. Now he's doing pediatric trauma surgery in a farmhouse. Carl survives. Maggie performs an emergency C-section on Lori with a knife in a prison boiler room. No surgical training. No sterile environment. Lori dies, but the baby survives perfectly healthy. Dr. Deborah Moguloff, an emergency physician, confirmed to MTV News that amputation is survivable, but requires a tourniquet, wound closure, and critically, sterile instruments. In the comics, Dale's amputation with dirty tools resulted in death from infection, the realistic outcome. The TV version skipped sterilization entirely. Data shows that even today, emergency C-sections in resource-limited settings kill 1 in 100 women, 100 times the rate in developed nations. Maggie had zero surgical training. Pre-modern maternal death rates were approximately 25 per 1,000 births. Without antibiotics, any open wound from improvised surgery would become infected. Sepsis would set in within days. The show normalizes the idea that major surgery can succeed with kitchen utensils and determination. Characters routinely recover from stabbings, gunshot wounds, and severe trauma within days. Glenn gets beaten nearly to death by Negan. Skull fractures, brain swelling. He's functional in a week. Without sterile conditions, antibiotics, blood transfusion capability, and trained personnel, most procedures would result in death from infection or blood loss. Wandering alone. Characters constantly wander off alone in a world designed to punish it. Carl wanders into the woods alone, indirectly causing Dale's death. Carol leaves Alexandria alone. Denise, the group's only medic, insists on going outside the walls and is killed by an arrow. Daryl pursues Dwight alone and is captured. Characters regularly explore buildings, walk at night, and scout terrain solo. Sergeant Major Burke invoked the most basic military principle. In the military, we have the buddy system. No one goes anywhere alone. If our heroes had adopted this concept early on, it would have prevented Dale from wandering into an open field at night to have his guts ripped out. One basic rule, enforced consistently, would have saved lives. Burke's rage peaks with Denise. They should have locked her up rather than letting the only medic outside of the wire. Your only doctor demands to leave the walls. Say no and deal with her being upset, or let her go and risk losing the one person who can perform surgery. Rick let her go. She dies. Now the entire community has no medical professional. Michael Major, a Canadian Forces veteran, added that the group failed to plan for evacuation. No rally points. No practiced routes. No emergency caches. When Alexandria is overrun, everyone scatters in random directions with no coordination. Solo movement in hostile territory violates every survival and military doctrine. You can't provide mutual security. You can't call for help. You can't verify threats. Every solo departure either directly causes a death or narrowly avoids one. The fix costs nothing. Enforce the rule that nobody goes anywhere alone, ever. Burke's final assessment captures it perfectly. The Walking Dead is a great show if you want to learn how to die horribly in the apocalypse. If the characters did anything the way I would, Rick would be Warlord of North America, and it would be the most boring show on television. The show sacrifices practical survival for dramatic tension at every turn. Characters don't wear armor because it reduces suspense. They don't use radios because miscommunication drives plot. Gas works forever because walking is boring television. Nobody enforces the buddy system because splitting up creates cliffhangers. The apocalypse wouldn't be won by the toughest fighter or the best shot. It would be won by the person who digs a ditch, wears a leather jacket, carries a radio, and never walks anywhere alone. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.